In this video, I'm going to show you my circular network architecture, which has helped me get a long way. This is only chapter 2. I'm only up to chapter 2, so I'm still learning, and we may well find that it's absolutely not helpful for later chapters and later in the game, but so far it's helped me get a long way to have an idea of a planned network architecture in advance so that I can place my stations, tracks and warehouses in sensible places right from the beginning without having to demolish them or change things later, especially as the competition in orange here starts to interfere with everything I try to do. So when I start out, I don't have much money, and there are lots of constraints with geography, but I will try to build a circle connecting 3 cities. All of my circles connect 3 cities, initially with limited funds, only 1 track, but with some passing sidings around the circle to allow trains to go both clockwise and anti-clockwise. The reason I only have 3 cities is because a number of reasons. Firstly, it allows every city to be directly connected to every other city without going via anything. That means 2 trains going in opposite directions can provide 6 express fast services, 6 services, A to B, B to C, C to A, and A to C, C to B, and B to A. Secondly, each city has 2 or 3 industries. So if you can make all of the industries different and complementary around the circle, the trains going either clockwise or anti-clockwise can distribute those goods amongst all 3 cities so that every city just about has everything that it will ever need. But when I first build the circles, I do so with a plan to expand the circle to 4 tracks. That is, 2 tracks for slow freight trains, 1 in each direction, and 2 tracks for fast passenger trains, 1 in each direction. So, for example, if we zoom in on this city, I will first build the inside curve because it is much easier to add tracks on the outside of a curve just in case to prevent the curves becoming too tight. Similarly, if I have a river or a competing railroad, I will try to get myself a lot of space so that I don't have the station doesn't get jammed up against the river where you can't build tracks easily, and a lot of space to grow the number of tracks and add a warehouse or do other things. Another thing I do very early is I try to put 2 stations in the cities I'm interested in to prevent the competition from building a station in that city. So if you look at Atlanta here in the middle, I've got 2 stations. The lower southern station is for my new emerging thin circle to the south, and the northern station has already got a very well developed 4-track circle going to the north. Before I move up to that to show you that circle, it's easy to, you can choose whether you put the passenger trains on the inside of the circle or the outside of the circle, and it'll vary according to your needs. For example, in this lowest circle, there is no rural industry inside the circle. Therefore, it makes sense to put the passenger tracks eventually on the inside of the circle and the freight tracks on the outside of the circle. In this northern circle, however, the way it developed, things were easier to put the warehouses and the freight on the inside of the circle, so the 2 outer tracks are for passenger trains. Another reason circles are very useful is that they remove the need for trains having to reverse. If a train has to come into a station and reverse, it then has to cross over onto the other outgoing track in the other direction. And while it's doing that, it holds up all of the trains coming in. So the idea is to have all of the trains flowing through quickly, one after the other. That gives very low times or high speed between cities, from city to city, and it also gives high throughput. Many more trains can come flowing through a station, giving a faster and easier transfer of goods. So the trains just keep going around and around, either clockwise or anti-clockwise. Now, warehouses. Firstly, I never run goods or freight from any rural industry to any city. All rural goods go to a warehouse using a point-to-point link or some other efficient, sometimes circular route. So the freight comes in to a warehouse. I locate my warehouse in close proximity to one city. In this case, in the middle, Knoxville, because the warehouse will directly feed those goods to that city without the need for any trains. I can get those goods to the other two cities by running freight trains around the freight circle, either clockwise or anti-clockwise. If we zoom in here then, we can see I've got a warehouse with 4 tracks. The outer 2, or the western 2 tracks, are for collecting incoming goods from rural industries. The eastern right tracks are connected to the freight circle, which are the inner 2 tracks of the 4-track network. So that would be a freight train. Actually, it's a mix. I haven't developed this circle yet, so that's still running whatever it can collect at the station. But eventually, the outer 2 will be passenger exclusively, and the inner 2 freight exclusively. And this freight branches out also to the warehouse. So that means I've got 3 types of trains running around the circle. On the outer 2 tracks of this circle, I've got passenger trains running clockwise or anti-clockwise, express, or very quickly as possible, without any delay. I've also got freight trains running through the 3 cities, distributing produced goods to other cities on the circle. And then from each warehouse, I will run a freight train, either clockwise or anti-clockwise or both, from the warehouse to the other 2 cities. We don't need to go to the local city. So I've got 3 types of trains. Passenger trains on passenger tracks, freight trains serving city to city, all 3 cities on the freight tracks, and warehouse trains from a warehouse to the other 2 cities, also on the freight tracks. Now, there needs to get things, people and things, between circles. So there will be connections. So for example, up here, I've got a very large circle in the south connecting Toledo to Pittsburgh, back around the south to Louisville, and then back up to Toledo. And inside that circle, I've got a warehouse. So in this case, the passenger trains are on the outside, freight's on the inside, and I've got another circle with a second station at Toledo, connecting Toledo, Grand Rapids, and Indianapolis, also with a warehouse inside that circle. But there's a need to get materials from the southern Toledo warehouse into the northern circle. So we connect freight links so to serve freight can be delivered from the southern warehouse clockwise or anti-clockwise, depending on how it's needed, around the northern circle. Similarly, there will be links for passenger trains. There was some task to create an express passenger train service, I think from Atlanta. So I used the passenger tracks exclusively, on that, which run on the outside. Then I made a link from this lower circle to the intermediate circle here. There's a passenger train. And I've put a little PA stands for passenger. And then connecting to the northern circle, again, passenger tracks are on the outside to get up to Grand Rapids. Oh, and here's something interesting. I never make trains reverse in a station. So I've made a little station up in a farm where I reverse my passenger trains. So they don't reverse in the station, they just fly through. They come up here. Also, they get maintained there. So they stop for a service up here before changing direction and coming back down. Anyway, oh, and over here, sometimes terrain is very difficult. So between Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Washington, I've had to make a squashed circle. I reuse the tracks. I fold them around back upon themselves. So, for example, here, let's just zoom out. I've got all this. We've got passenger and freight coming in one way. I split them into two. They come in on the right, so then I've got double track. That means I can get twice as many trains through because while one's stopped, the other train can go to the other platform. So I spread the load between two platforms. Then they come out, go fold back onto the same track. So it's a squashed circle. Similarly for freight, that comes around here, splits into two, takes two platforms. See there, you've got two trains. They're just flying through rather quickly. So that's one way to do it. Maybe not the best, but it's got me a fair way. Thanks.